sometimes, once in a while, we take the easy way. Isn't it true? We don't do what we're supposed to do. We take the shortcut, the easiest method, the path of least resistance. We look for the easy way out because it's convenient, because it doesn't cost. But sometimes it costs a little more than we think. We look for the easy way out. Don't we sometimes make it easy on ourselves? And just sometimes because we don't have the strength to do anything else, like we take Fruit Loops instead of getting up and make ourselves a meal just because we don't have the power, right? Or we don't quite share all the truth because telling all the truth might have consequences we're not ready to face, so we take a shortcut. Or we take the easy way because we didn't study for the test and it's much easier to just write crib notes. It's the easy way out. And we've all done it. It costs more for real wood, so we get the particle board. And we all know how that ends up, right? And it's different when we're looking for and settle for this one, to have someone, even though it's not the right one, because it's the easy way out. And sometimes in relationships, we think it through, and we think that it's better to walk out because it's the easy way. And I have to tell you, sometimes it costs more than we could imagine, thinking we're taking the easy way out. Satan's temptation for us is to take the easy way out. That's his temptation. To make the path slippery and sliding fast in the wrong direction. It was 72 hours that he had come through the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Amazing things had happened, but they still hadn't crowned him king. And now the crowds were starting to wane. It was as if he had been brought on, he's a jolly good fellow, on the back of the people and surfed into this town as if they were claiming him and lifting him up. But in the whole thing, their enthusiasm waned as Jesus didn't set himself up as king. And that's what they had expected. Especially when he came right into the temple and stood, they expected him to be king. But that night, instead, he went with his disciples and retired. They were saying, what is with him? I thought he was going to be our Messiah. Now, the Sanhedrin had continued, the leaders had continued to doubt Jesus. They hadn't believed in Jesus for a long time because he didn't fit their concept of Messiah. From the Sermon on the Mount on, when he declared the platform of his kingdom, he just wasn't the Messiah they were looking for. He talked about turning the other cheek and going the second mile and allowing those Romans to stay in their position when they were wanting to overthrow them. He didn't fit their concept of Messiah, so they weren't excited about him being there. In fact, they had made a little plan. Their plan was to get rid of Jesus permanently. And as Jesus was entering Jerusalem, it was almost as if he was playing into their hands. And you understand, in their hearts it was because even if Jesus would turn and become the Messiah that they wanted him to be, they would still be on the outside because they had rejected him. They had rejected him and he had rejected them. He didn't want anything to do with them. By that I mean, he didn't ask for their permission. He didn't seek their authority to lift him onto the throne. And they knew that if Jesus took his position on the throne, that they would probably be pushed to the side because the populace would follow him, and he certainly wouldn't set them on thrones beside him. So they were not excited about Jesus. He had rejected them as leaders, and they rejected him. I wonder how it affected Jesus' sense of his mission. I mean, think about it. If he had been called to preach to become the Messiah of the Gentiles, it would be one thing. But he was called to be the Messiah of the Jews. And the Jewish religious leaders rejected him. The church rejected him. And the people were fickle followers at best. On again, off again, masses all come, he says something and they disappear. They come, they rally around him, and then afterwards they disappear. It's just, I wonder if Jesus thought about his ministry if he considered himself a successful Jewish Messiah. I know for me, in a human form, it's always hard to measure success and say, so are you successful? How do you tell whether you're a success in the calling you've been given? For me, you look at the measurements of how success works, and sometimes you measure it by saying, how big is the church? Ask Joel Osteen about size, and it's like, we don't compare. And popularity, not everybody likes you. I wonder if Jesus ever looked for his denomination's approval to say, will they put me in position? The answer was no. I wonder if Jesus struggled with what it was to have success in his calling as Messiah. If he was measuring his success by those outward standards. And maybe at this very moment, when he was in Jerusalem and he was considering what was going to take place, and he realized that the people that he had come to be Messiah for didn't accept him. John 12:37, although he had performed so many signs of their presence, they did not believe in him. He performed these signs in their presence, they still didn't believe in him. He could do miracles, they still wouldn't accept him. And the population at this time soared. Some say up to 30 to 40% in Jerusalem during the Passover, it increased. So you stop and look at that and say, there's this massive influx of people. But they weren't all Jews. It says that they were also Greeks, Gentiles. John 12:20 says, now there were some Greeks among those who were coming to worship at the feast. There were Greeks who'd come. Now you have to take the Greeks and understand these were Hellenists. These were those who didn't speak the Jewish language. There were those who weren't of the Jewish faith. There are basically three categories of Greeks, believing Greeks. The first are called proselytes of righteousness. They were completely reborn Greeks. They were Greeks who'd undergone circumcision, had went through baptism to be born again. They followed all of the feast days and all of the rituals in eating and customary cleansings. They followed it all. They had all except for flesh become completely Jews. Then there were the proselytes of the gate, also called God-fearers. These are the people who believed in one God. They had a monotheistic concept of the one God, and they believed in that one God, but they weren't quite ready to jump in hook, line, and sinker. I mean by that, circumcision was not necessarily the thing that they decided was exciting to have happen. Nor were they willing to go through all the feasts and festivals or eat necessarily the way, but they still believed in the one God, and they were called God-fearers at different levels and at different states of growth. These are the proselytes of the gate. And they're called that because they weren't able to be entered into the sanctuary at all. They were proselytes at the gate. And then I include this group just because Scripture includes them, even though they're not a prominent group, and that's the lion proselytes. You may not have caught that. It's from 2 Kings 17:25. When they first lived there, they did not worship the Lord. So he sent lions among them. They killed some of the people, and then they believed. Some of us are lion Adventists. We're there because our mama says we need to be there, or because our spouse says we need to be there, or because we think that it's going to be popular for the community, and we're lion Adventists. In looking at these groups that were there, it makes sense that they would come at the end of Jesus' ministry. This is John 12, and at John 12, he starts this procession toward the cross. This is the end week. Half of John is dedicated to this week of Jesus' life. Think about that. Jesus lived for 30-some years, and the half of the gospel is dedicated to this week. As it's happening, this is the turning point, right here. Just as honoring magi came from other countries to worship Jesus at the beginning of his ministry, now at the end of his ministry, the Gentiles also come to honor Jesus. Had they heard of the triumphal entry? Had they recognized that Jesus was coming to set himself up? Had they realized that the Jews had rejected Jesus? Were they giving him an offer? to come and be the Gentile Messiah. They approached Philip from Bethsaida of Galilee, a Greek. They approached Philip because you know how it is. It's easier to talk to one of your own. Somebody who speaks your language, who has your background and culture and custom, maybe nationality. It makes sense that they would come to Philip. And Philip approached Andrew. By the way, Andrew is also one of the only Greek disciples. And the two of them come to approach Jesus with the request that they have. These Gentiles have a request. You see, they've come and it says they came to worship, and now they were seeking the object of their worship. Just like the Magi had at the beginning. In John 12, verse 21, it says, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Say it with me. Sir, we wish to see Jesus. That's their request. They'd come to worship. They wanted to see Jesus. Maybe to engage him, maybe to put him in his rightful place as Lord. They had not come to get a list of tasks to perform. They hadn't come for more rules. They hadn't come for doctrinal clarification. They'd not come to explore religious philosophy. They'd not come to venerate the saints. They hadn't come to worship Andrew and Philip. They'd come to get Andrew and Philip to point him to Jesus. They weren't even there searching for the church of God. They were searching for the Son of God. They had a vision of what they were after. Sir, we wish to see Jesus. To taste and see that the Lord is good. To experience him, to draw into communion with him. Not to just study about him, not to just hear doctrines about him, but to find him. They wanted Jesus. This last week, and I'm not actually sure how it happened, on Facebook I got a notice from somebody that they had made reference to my book, and I ended up following the process and going to the Facebook page for ex-Adventists and other Adventists, though ex-Adventist is the major category that's there. And I started reading through, and there were lots of things, and as I was reading, I had to respond, because when they represented Adventists as endorsing homosexuality and abortion, I couldn't just let it stand. So I made a few comments along the way. But as I started reading through all their posts on their Facebook page, I noticed a similar concept. What they had to complain about the Adventist church. Their complaint almost singularly was, their common thread that traced through every element was that they hadn't found Jesus there. For most part, they were Christian, holding up Jesus against what they saw as legalism. But it made me stop and say, we need to experience Jesus Christ. They had a longing in their heart, and it's the natural longing of the heart to find Jesus. Jesus draws us and says, "Come, let us reason together. Though your sins be like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." See, there's a battle raging inside of them, and they're looking for somebody to be their champion who will stand and fight for them against the issues of sin in their own drawing. They're looking for somebody to be their real Messiah of their own lives, their deliverer that they're seeking for, the spiritual Messiah. They're there to find him. Sir, we wish to see Jesus. From John's beginning all the way through, he makes a clear path of what Jesus' mission is. Jesus is God with us. God walking among us, helping us to see the character of God and the heart of God. And they wanted to say, I want to see him. I want to be with him. And for us, I want to tell you, it's the same thing today. People today have the same thing that they're looking for. They don't need a longer list of actions to perform. They don't need just doctrinal clarification. They don't come just to explore religious philosophy. They haven't come for worshiping us as the true elite remnant saints. They've come for a different purpose. It may not even be searching for the church of God. They're searching for the Son of God. They say, we want to see Jesus. And they should. They should be able to come here and see Jesus in our lives, and how we love each other, and how we forgive each other, and how we care for each other, and in how we support each other. They should be able to see Jesus. We wish to see Jesus. What would happen if every time somebody walked through the door, they looked at our lives and said, Jesus is here? Do you know what effect that would have on our community? You know the power that that would have? They wouldn't go out and be sharing, oh, they have the right message. They wouldn't be out there saying, look, they're the last day people. They have prophecy right. Well, you should live how they live health-wise because they have a great health message. They are good family planners, and look at how their families are working. No, they would be saying, Jesus is there. He's alive there. Let's go and see Jesus. Jesus had come to be a spiritual Messiah. That was his mission. Andrew and Philip came and told Jesus. Now, you have to think of this. Jesus is here, and he knows what he's facing. I know he knows because he told the disciples, I must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the chief priests, and be crucified, and die, and then be raised up. But he knew what was ahead. Have you ever been in college and faced final exams? I mean, like all of them wielding on you at one time, and you're in that last quarter, and you kind of procrastinated till the end there. None of you would have done that, right? Sort of procrastinated to the end there, and now all of the weight of those tests is on your shoulder. Whether you graduate or not is on that test. And as that college student, somebody from outside comes and offers you a job making more money than you could have ever imagined, but it needs to be now. Do you know how easy it would be to walk away from those exams? Hello? So what happened is, they come to Jesus and say, the Jews have rejected you. We seek you. Come be our Messiah. The tempting to take the easy way out. Don't have to look for but if you leave the Jews, you don't have the crucifixion issue anymore, right? Because they're worried about Jesus leaning out. Well, so if he left them and became the Gentiles' Messiah, he wouldn't have those same problems. And John 12:27 presents the word of the struggle he has this way. Now, my soul has become troubled. Why would his soul become troubled? Because the Greeks came and wanted to see him. It's because he had this choice to make. My soul has become troubled. Do I take the easy way out? You know, his temptation at Gethsemane was that. You can imagine Satan saying, look at them. They don't even want you. They won't take you as their leader alone. You die for them. They don't even acknowledge you as the Messiah. They wouldn't even let you preach in their temple if they could help it. So, why would you die for them? Why would you let them crucify you? Go be the Gentiles' Messiah. They want you. They want you. They'll set you up. They'll glorify you. They want you in their spiritual lives. You can be the spiritual Messiah that you desire of the Gentiles. They wanted him. Sir, we wish to see Jesus. He could be their Messiah without the crucifixion, without the death, without the struggle. But see, Jesus, from the very beginning of the book of John, realized that this hour, this test was coming. This moment. In John 2:4, he says, when at the time of his mother coming and asking him to turn water into wine, he says, my hour has not yet come. He knew where he was heading. He knew that hour. John 7 6 through 8. My time has not yet come, but your time is always opportune. John 7:30, his hour had not yet come. They knew this time was working. And he said that he'd been called to the sheep, the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And they didn't want him. Now his hour was here. He was either going to go to the cross or go to the Gentiles. In human terms, he was either going to end his ministry as the leader of the religious people, or he was going to start a brand new ministry that was powerful and would make a difference to the Gentile world who wanted him. Jesus says, now my soul has become troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. He knew what they were asking. Father, save me from this hour. What should I say? Father, save me from this hour so that I can just go and be them? What should I say? Should I take this hour when it's come to this point of me offering my life and say, later, some other way, not this way? You know, that's the same thing he prays in Gethsemane. Father, take this cup from me. This choice is before then. He has the choice now to go be with the Greeks. The Greeks say, we'll give you the glory. Get up and go with us. Come on, be our Messiah. We want you, Jesus. Jesus asked, what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? John 12:27. But for this purpose, I came to this hour. Not for the glory of humanity, not for my comfort. I came to reveal God's character, in an act of self-sacrificing love to ransom all my children from Satan, sin, and death. Not just those who want me, not just the Gentiles, but everybody, to give them all freedom. And in order to do that, I have to go to the cross. Regardless of how they respond to me, I will die for them. Romans 5:6-8 puts it, for while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will hardly die for a righteous man, though for a righteous man one might die. But God showed his love for us in that he demonstrates his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It says this was his hour. This was why he come. He knew his purpose. He was going to be the King of glory, but not human glory. He was going to be the King of God's glory, to demonstrate what selfless love is like. And then he amplifies this, as if to explain to them why he's not going to come with them. He says, what should I say? Should I say, spare me from this crisis and go with you? Or I came for this purpose. Let me explain. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. That's saying I can have fruit that goes through the whole world. Father, glorify your name. For whose glory do we live? See, that was his choice. Whether he's going to live for himself, for his comfort, for his ease, or for the glory of the kingdom of God. We have that choice every day, don't we? And sometimes we take the easy way out because our real issue is us. We're looking to us. We're not looking for God. Everything in me, use it for your glory. Whatever I have, God, take it. Take my time. Take what I do at work. Take how I relate to people. If it's going to bring glory to you, take it, Lord. It's yours. I want to give you the glory. Can you say amen? John 12:28. The Father received Jesus' offering. Then a voice came out of heaven saying, I have both glorified it and I will glorify it again. I've glorified your name and I will glorify it again. Note those key times in Jesus' ministry. When Jesus is there at his baptism, the Father says, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. A voice comes from heaven at the transfiguration, and it says, this is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased. See, Jesus came for a purpose. He knew that Satan had claimed our lives, and he was going to pay the price to give us life. John 12 continues. So Jesus is amplifying all that's going on. He's explaining why he's not going to the Gentiles. He says, it's because I need to lay my life down so that everyone can have life, so that the whole world can have life. Now is the judgment upon this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. He understands that what's happening in this hour is not just that he's lifted up among people, but that he defeats Satan. Too often, we make our decisions based on what happens on the earth in our viewpoint rather than from a heavenly standpoint. We forget that there's unseen worlds that are watching our actions. We forget that how we live builds a testimony for God that he's working our life. We sometimes only look at this world. Now is the judgment upon this world. Now is the ruler of this world cast out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all men to myself. Not just Gentiles. Even those Jews who have rejected me. When I'm lifted up, I'll draw through the power of the Spirit everyone to me. Because Satan's power will have been defeated. Satan no longer has rightful rulership in our lives. Because of a choice that God made, then Satan was dealt a death blow. He no longer has rightful rulership in your life. And next time you're tempted to tell yourself that you can't overcome this sin, but the chains are too hard, the answer is, it's a lie. Satan doesn't have the power in your life. He can't control you. God has already won the victory for you. You're not waiting for the victory. He's already won the victory. You're just called to live in his victory. He said, I came for this hour. In our lives. To set us free. To give us hope. I came for this hour. For this purpose. Sir, I wish to see Jesus. I just want to be there sitting at his feet. Taking him in his presence, drawing closer. I just want to be there at the feet of Jesus, worshiping him. The reason I came is to worship. I just sit at his feet for a purpose of opening my heart to him and saying, you are my Messiah, sitting at his feet. Please, would you kneel with me as we look and sing the song, Sitting at His Feet?